Hey Chelsea, this is just like a little wrap up on this walk. This is great. I really love how this turned out. It looks smooth, it looks fun, it looks funny. It has really believable like weight and body mechanics. I feel like you kind of effortlessly nailed this one. And perhaps that's because you had like a strong piece of reference, but that is a great lesson to learn um, when you're starting off animating is how valuable a strong piece of reference is. And you didn't just copy the reference. Like I see that you're kind of doing your own thing. You made your own choices. Um, so all that's great. I love this. I think it's really strong. You know, I don't have a ton of notes as far as things that look, you know, like that are catching my eye that are like a little wrong. You know, quote unquote wrong. I'm not the biggest fan of that language, but anyways, one of the only so I got two things that I'm noticing is that one is when the blue foot is in the forward position. Maybe not. Maybe it's not true. Maybe it's just the camera angle. Um, let me see. There's something about where I'm feeling just a little bit more of like a toe lift at this forward part than I am on the red leg. And I don't know why that is. Like I'm kind of struggling to figure it out. Um, and I'm not saying it's like a terrible thing or anything. I want to understand what my brain is seeing. Yeah, maybe it's because the blue leg feels like maybe it's just a little more um, extended forward than the red leg. Like if I look at the grid lines, like that's kind of the grid line it goes in front of. Yeah, and this red leg is just a little bit behind the grid line. So maybe just push this one a little bit forward. It's a tiny thing. And I don't even know if it's correct. But anyways, it's just like an impression that I had. I feel like, okay, so I'm not sure if the blue heel is on the ground right here. It looks like maybe it's lifted a little bit, but maybe it's just the angle of the camera. So maybe that's fine. But what I am seeing with the blue is that it kind of rolls up in a more gradual kind of way than the red foot does. The red foot goes from something that looks pretty flat here to like having the heel like pretty lifted up off the ground. And then it kind of feels like this is a same angle. So I think maybe with this heel lift, um, I would suggest lowering this one down just a tiny bit. And, you know, I don't, yeah, I think I would just, it just needs to be animated into a little bit more. Like maybe this one even gets lowered down a tiny bit so that it's a little more gradual. Like, because it seems kind of just like the heel jumps up off the ground. Now maybe that's just the angle of these cameras, and maybe when you get in there and look at it, it'll actually be fine. But one of the things too to analyze is the T Z motion that you have on this foot. Once it makes contact with the ground, it should be fairly consistently spaced through this. So when you get it off the treadmill, if you actually want to make it move through space, like the feet aren't going to be skating or sliding. And I kind of feel like I'm seeing a big jump, like some variations in the spacing, right? Like, so from here to here, it looks tiny, and then that's tiny, and then, so I'm concerned about this spacing and this spacing right here. Maybe you just, you know, when you're going through like a final polish pass, I don't need to see this again. I think that you're in a great spot with this. This is like a good showpiece and all that. I think like you're in a great spot. So all this is just polish, cleanup stuff if you want, if you find the time. But these are just things that I would look at. And then so the feet, those were the comments I had about the feet. And the only other thing I think that maybe you could layer in slightly, and I'm not even sure how necessary it is, has to do with the fingers. So like you're in this finger pose, maybe as the hand is going forward, you kind of like drag these fingers back just a little bit, right? Like you give them just a little like pass through pose, and they can stay kind of in that drag pose until they reach the top, and then they kind of straighten out into this pose by this frame. something like that could be a little fun and add like a little floppiness to the anim, because you know it's a pretty floppy cycle. It's just like a little way to plus it, because this is already great, really strong, really great. So great work. Thanks for seeing this through. Really fun stuff. Do those changes if you feel like it, but otherwise I don't need to see this again. This is great. All right, thanks.